Oh, my stats are higher than his. Oh, I was so counting on that promotion.
Could I take it?
Thank you. Check, please. Now, what do I do about Dad? Oh, I wish I could file a complaint. But you know how hard it is to prove discrimination?
Damn it, girl! What's the matter with you? Can't you do anything right?
I'm sorry. Listen.
It's coming out of your paycheck. Understand? If it wasn't for that nice ass of yours, I'd fire you. Say you won't do it again, okay?
There is still a fundamental perception that women and girls are not equal to men and boys. Until that changes, we are going to continue to see discrimination, exploitation, and violence, and they really are all interrelated.
This one's actually a picture of me when I was maybe about 16. It was at our first national tournament. I'm a pitcher. I play first base and outfield. My dad is a huge sports fan, and he just didn't accept, us being cheerleaders or anything. He wanted us to be more physical. And he has no boys, so we basically filled in that role. You could see this is basically how it was. I mean, when we used to play, I don't even think you could call this grass, really. I have boy cousins, and when I'd go watch them play, I would be like, you guys have lights, and you guys have these nice dugouts, and your bleachers are metal. I've been playing softball since I was 4 years old, so for 13 years, I was used to it. The field is full of holes, and, it's uneven. Our bleachers are wood, and we would get splinters.
They always put the girls, second, and it's not fair.
After some time, a lawsuit was put against the city, and after more time, we finally won our case. On our old bleachers, our parents never even sat on them because they were afraid of getting splinters or whatnot. Just the bleachers, it makes a big difference, because before, we didn't have any of that. And they were ordered to build us a new field or give us a field on city property that was up to what the boys had, just to make it fair. And that's all we asked for. Well, this is our new field, and those are the lights that were put in for us, which helps us play longer and, safer. It wasn't for myself, because by that time I was already too old to even play on the fields, but I have 2 younger sisters and younger cousins, and my dad coaches, and, I was just so happy that, there could be change. I haven't really realized what I've done until, now, after everything, and when I sit back and reflect on it, I'm like, wow, I did a lot,
I have one brother. But he had a totally different upbringing than I did, because I'm a girl and he's a boy. So I got this old Buick that, didn't have the ick. It only had the BU, and it was always breaking down constantly. And then my brother got a red Porsche. Well, why does he get a Porsche, and why do I have this gross car? Because he's a boy. They need a sports car.
Yeah, everything was wonderful when we first met. I thought I met the person I was going to be with forever. He actually very much didn't like any of my friends, especially my single friends. You know what I mean? He was very, well, if they're single, then you're going to, the real jealousy issue. Gradually I got a job, and I got my own car, and, started becoming more independent. It made me feel wonderful. I felt like I was, really contributing. You don't see it when it's happening to you, the progression of it, of, like I said, the yelling, to getting in your face, to pushing, and eventually, and I know that it would have gotten worse if I had stayed. I think I was out with one of my friends, and I called him and I said, we're going to be back later, and he was really mad about it. And when I got in the bedroom, he had just grabbed me and started kind of choking me. I never thought I was the type of person who would stand for such a thing. I really always believed that if anyone had ever done that to me, I would walk away.
22% to 33% of women in their lifetime will experience violence from an intimate partner.
The bathroom was kind of in this little cove, and he just started punching the walls around my head, inches from my head. Finally, he just started hitting me all in the back of the head, you know, all through here, you know, just punching me with his fist as I'm just like in hysterics, you know, screaming for help.
The next morning, she goes to work, which was an indication to the landlord that she was not really a battered woman.
She wasn't playing the stereotypical gendered role of what they thought a victim of domestic violence would do after an assault, and therefore they said they didn't believe that she had been a victim of domestic violence.
And then a few days later I got an eviction notice.
Too often landlords react to violence in the home by pushing the woman who's the victim of the violence out of the apartment, thinking that that'll solve the problem.
I felt like my whole world was falling apart. After everything that had just happened to me, after all of that, suddenly someone wanted to take away the one thing that I was trying to keep together.
This case is really about whether you can be evicted from your home just because your husband beat you up.
It's a very lonely position to be a plaintiff in a civil rights case, and you're very vulnerable to being attacked by the other side, because the way the other side defends the case is by attacking the plaintiff and saying, we were not discriminating against her, she was really a bad tenant, and let me tell you the ways in which she was.
There was many times when I was just like, I just want this to be over, I just want it to be done. I tried to keep as much of everything away from them as possible.
The incident occurred in October. The complaint was filed in federal court in November.
I think the more people know about it, then the more people are going to be aware and not let other people who think they have power over you because they're your landlord or whatever be able to say, you know, well, I'm evicting you.
Often women are faced with eviction even when the boyfriend or the ex-husband beating them up doesn't even live there, is a visitor who's come onto the property. Women still lose their homes because they've been beaten up in their homes.
We effectively defeated the eviction.
It's the first time that a federal district court held that discrimination against a victim of domestic violence constitutes sex discrimination under the Fair Housing Act.
Knowing that it was possibly going to help so many more people was the main reason why I just kept going and was willing to take it as far as they wanted to.
You gain strength, courage, and confidence by every experience in which you really look fear in the face. You must do the thing which you think you cannot do.
The data show that women of color are more vulnerable economically in our society and in other ways. As a matter of fact, women of color, in particular African American and Latino women and some groups of Asian American women, make much lower incomes. They are disproportionately poor, and therefore their poverty leads to certain dire consequences in their lives.
Yo soy mexicana.
I'm Mexican.
Yo vine con mi esposo y mi hija.
I came with my husband and my daughter.
Yo trabajaba de 9:45 a...
And I had to work from 9:45 to 7:30. He only paid me $40 a day.
Yo soy dominicana.
I'm from the Dominican Republic. This is my son. He's cute. He's 6 months old.
What's his name? ¿Cómo se llama?
Johnny.
Johnny.
Señor me pagaba menos de lo...
The boss would pay me less than minimum wage.
Y aparte de eso,
and then he added more jobs for me.
Yo tenía que limpiar,
I had to clean,
cocinar,
iron,
y hacerle compra en el
cook,
supermercado para la casa.
and do his own grocery shopping for his house.
Eso era fuera del trabajo.
That was besides the job that I had at the store.
Que yo podía ganar mucho más si yo...
The boss said I could earn much more if I would have sexual relations with him.
Women obviously have been discriminated against historically in the workplace, and for the most part, because there are certain laws in place that protect women, that sort of discrimination has been eradicated. However, there are certain areas, industries, in which the protections of the law don't extend, or people don't think it's a realistic thing that they're going to be called to task for the way that they are treating these women.
El señor no gritaba.
The boss would yell at us. He would tell us that we were damn Dominicans, that we were useless, that women were useless. Whenever we were behind the counter, he would pass us and rub against us. When I went into his office, he was watching a pornographic film, and he pretended not to see me. He didn't turn it off.
And I would say I would get about 5 calls a week asking for referrals or asking us to represent women who are in these situations.
Once we had to go to his Brooklyn house, and the boss went into the bathroom, and he came out naked. He told us to get undressed, and then he started to scream at us. And he grabbed my coworker by the wrist, and then he pushed her on the bed. And she started to fight with him, trying to push him away. I went to help her, and then I just grabbed him and I tried to pull him off her. Then he started to get very, very angry, and he started to scream at us. And he was telling us that we were both dirty whores.
To have a boss who you know every day when you go to work is going to harass you and try to touch you. And these women stay in their jobs between 1 year and 2 years sometimes because they have to. The options for an immigrant woman with no education in the United States are very limited. They have families to support. Many immigrants come to this country with families in their countries of origin that are completely dependent on what they make here in the United States. People who hire them know that, they know that they can exploit them. They tell them all the time in this case and in many others that I've seen, you're just an immigrant, you have no options, and you're a woman on top of everything. So you're an immigrant woman, really the bottom of the barrel. There needs to be a greater enforcement of minimum wage laws, of overtime laws, and of anti-discrimination laws. And there needs to be a greater effort to educate these communities and enfranchise these women so that they feel like they are a part of these communities and that they know what their rights are and know that they have a way of enforcing these rights.
Our clients in this case were extremely brave to stand up for what they knew was right. It took a lot of courage for them to demand fairness on the job. And they did so not only for their own benefit, but because they know that this kind of exploitation harms immigrant women across the country.
Poor women have greater difficulty than women who are not poor in obtaining abortion, for example.
Access to abortion has been tremendously undercut in many, 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 many ways. Somewhere between 85% and 87% of counties in this country don't have an abortion provider.
The Hyde Amendment to the federal law makes it impossible to use Medicaid support to pay for abortions.
We're not asking for abortion to be treated specially, we're asking for the discrimination against abortion to end. We have a lawsuit in Georgia challenging this restriction to try to have abortions treated on the same terms as other services covered by Medicaid, so that abortion would be covered when a doctor said it was necessary for your health.
We were real happy when we found out I was pregnant. And then I started puking all the time. And it got so I couldn't keep anything down. And at first my husband was like, I thought you'd be getting fat and I'm getting skinny.
After I got pregnant, that's when my illness really got bad. And by the 4th month, the pain was so bad I couldn't hardly stand or help out around the house.
I was getting dizzy and my thinking was all haywire.
That's when I really wanted to get an abortion, but Medicaid wouldn't pay for it.
The case involves many, many clinics and doctors in Georgia who care for women, who have brought this lawsuit on behalf of the women they serve, saying that this particular policy really hurts the women they see, hurts their health, and is a violation of their rights.
I thought an abortion is better than this, but the Medicaid wouldn't pay for it.
This woman wound up hospitalized at 7 weeks of pregnancy, having already lost 30 pounds and in crisis.
So when I got there, they hooked me up to the IVs for the dehydration. And that stopped the dizziness, but the nausea was the same.
Instead, they put me in the hospital, and they replaced all my blood with other people's blood. They paid for that.
You could be hurting me, and it could be hurting the baby.
And we have asked the trial court judge to declare the policy a violation of the Georgia Constitution. It's an argument we've made in several other states, and we've had success in many other states, and by virtue of that, many women now get health care without discrimination.
So I stayed there for a month until my mama sold the car so that we could have the money.
The pain was so bad they had to give me morphine every 3 hours. Finally, they were able to do a C-section.
So now we got no car. but I'm not throwing up anymore, so that's good, I guess, right?
I am loud and I am showy because I have been given a voice. I respect the views of pro-life, but I am pro-choice. And that doesn't mean I don't value the potential to carry the next leader in my womb, but until a man can give birth, I believe it's a woman's right to choose.
I think abortion is what gets most of the public attention, but there really is an increasing effort to restrict access to birth control as well. And you see that in reports about state legislatures considering giving, in essence, license to pharmacists to refuse to fill birth control prescriptions. You see it with insurance policies, where insurance policies cover all prescriptions except birth control, including prescriptions for Viagra.
No woman can call herself free who does not own and control her body. No woman can call herself free until she can choose consciously whether she will or will not be a mother.
Women, over many decades of struggle, gained the vote in this country, a long and drawn-out process. Immigrant women banded together in this country in the early 20th century especially to demand basic workplace safety protections, basic wage and hour protections, a fight that goes on today.
There is an entire sector of work that is dominated by low-wage women. The obstacles that they face there are manifold.
Women are a resource to be used, and there's a whole field of thought about how a culture treats the women is how they treat the environment.
Diane is the most powerful example I've ever seen of how anyone can make a difference.
You stupid woman. I heard that my entire life. For 16 years, I've been fighting the petrochemical industries on the Gulf Coast that have taken over our bays, that have taken over our communities. They have annihilated it.
But especially when you started seeing the catches going down where you could not make a living. We had this green tide that was like pea green, and it covered the bays like a blanket. And the fish, you would see them popping their heads out just like little camera lights because they couldn't survive. I was constantly told I was a hysterical woman. It became a class issue because I was a fisherwoman. You have a stereotype. They're not real bright. They're not real educated. I didn't know what I was talking about. I was making it up.
I started out fighting it very typically, and I have since grown into nonviolent civil disobedience.
She's under indictment for that right now. She's done a sequence of hunger strikes, several of them lasting as long as 30 days.
So when you have a people, and especially women, that have been so repressed and they have nothing else to lose, it's like I hate to throw a biblical phrase out there, but the way you gain yourself is you lose yourself. And sometimes it's real important, and that's one of those myths. That's a Phoenix Fire myth, is that you have to incinerate. You have to burn completely, and then you're reborn.
So what she's been doing is to put pressure on the multinational chemical corporations to actually sign and implement zero discharge agreements.
The ACLU is the best damn lawyer I ever had. When I started doing my actions, it started changing how I felt about myself.
And she has actually gotten them to sign zero discharge agreements.
I have never felt so strong in my life. Very free.
When I dare to be powerful, to use my strength in the service of my vision, then it becomes less and less important whether I am afraid.
Simon Gonzalez was very much in love with me. He was very poetic, and he was very ambitious. He wanted this image to be a perfect family picture. He was scary to be around. You didn't know what was going to trigger his outbursts. I had to really be the link for them, to teach them to be forgiving for his faults, because that's what I thought parents did. He bought me flowers and thought that because he bought me flowers that I would accept him back, and when I chose not to, of course, the last words he said to me were, "Then I know what I have to do." And because he had been coming by the house and parking across the street and watching us and hiding and jumping out of dark corners. I just didn't know what to expect. My divorce attorney had assured me over and over again that my restraining order would be upheld.
The problem is that in too many states and localities, police don't enforce those restraining orders, don't make the arrest when someone violates that order, and thus the order can give a false sense of security to the woman who has it, and she might not take steps she otherwise would take to protect herself because she thinks the police will protect her.
It was a Tuesday night. Simon called and spoke to Rebecca, and she said, "Dad, you know, it's not our night to see you. We'll see you on Wednesday." So naturally, I wanted to know if he showed up while the kids were out playing. Over an hour went by, so of course I got extremely worried. I suspected Simon, but I wasn't sure. So I called the police and I told them what I suspected. An hour and a half later, it was 7:30 and the police still hadn't shown up. So at 10 till 8, they finally showed up, showed them the restraining order. They looked at it for probably 15 seconds and said, "What's the problem?" They said, "We'll look for them around town and call us in a couple of hours if you hear from them." So I, of course, tried to call Simon from the minute the children disappeared until 8:30 when he actually returned my phone call and said, "I've got the children." I said, "Look, it's a school night. You've got to bring them home. I've called the police." He said, "I'll have them right home." It's now 10:10. They're still not home. And I'm hearing nothing from Simon or the children. And I called the police again at 12:40 and I said, "Why isn't anybody here? Why aren't you taking me serious? My children have been missing for hours, for over 7 hours. You've known where they are and you can't find them?" And they said, "We're really sorry. We've, had some emergencies." Not only did these police officers work with me, and they knew me on a personal level to know that I wasn't crying wolf, but Simon had had so many run-ins with them on a personal level without me, without my interference, without me calling, that they should have known exactly who they were dealing with by the time I phoned them.
These laws were passed specifically because historically police have thought that domestic violence isn't that big a deal and that it's not worth going to the scene of the crime and it's not worth making an arrest to stop domestic violence.
Almost 4 o'clock in the morning, his ex-girlfriend finally said, "I found Simon. He's on 4th and Front Street," which was where the Castle Rock Police Department was. She said, "I heard gunfire and I heard an officer saying that he found 3 dead children in the back of the truck." I couldn't believe it. It was hard.
Who did you turn to? Who was there for you?
My family and my son. He was 13 at the time. And bless his heart, I asked my best friend to stay with Jesse at the house in Castle Rock. I just didn't want him to be woke because I knew it would be the last night that he got a good night's sleep and that forever he would be expected to be an adult and that would be the end of his innocence,
There are many laws in states that say police cannot be sued under state laws unless their actions are, for example, willful and wanton or so extreme.
Jessica knew she could never overcome this state hurdle, and that's why she appealed to the federal court.
When a state passes a law saying the police must arrest in a domestic violence case, whether that means the police actually must arrest, whether if the police fail to arrest, there's any recourse for the woman who's harmed as a result of the police failure to arrest.
What I wanted to have happen was for the Supreme Court to recognize the hard work that the 10th Circuit Court put into a revised version of restraining order laws to actually make them worth the paper they're written on.
Family rights groups and children's rights groups and the ACLU, all of us signed on. And so It was, I think, an inspiring moment to see all of these groups from all across the country signing on and coming together to rally around Jessica.
The Supreme Court heard my case. They had until the end of June to make a decision. My attorney gave me a call early in the morning on, I believe it was the 27th of June. He said, "Jessica, we lost. The Supreme Court ruled against us." And I said, "So does that mean that all of the time that our case spent mean nothing?" And he said, "We are just as unprotected now as we were 6 years ago."
The Supreme Court decision was a setback.
We are looking at other avenues to try to change Colorado state law.
So we have filed a petition in the Inter-American Commission seeking redress for Jessica Gonzalez, as well as pressure on the United States government and state governments to hold police accountable.
There is still a chance to do that through legal action. We will definitely go forward with that to try to find different avenues to be protected instead of victims.
We always have multiple goals. We want to gain redress for the individual client. We want to stop the kind of exploitation or abuses that happened in this case to other women. And we also want to change public opinion. And one of the ways in which Jessica Gonzalez has been such a strong advocate in all of this is that she's out there speaking about these issues.
I refuse to let this go any further than this generation. If I have to spend the rest of my life fighting to keep families safe from being victimized.
I think so many people now think of, like, sometimes the law and things like that as a joke, and but this was such a good experience to know that there were so many people out there who were willing to help.
I felt like I had so much power, and it was really nice, and just to go up there and tell my story.
What I want to say is you have to resist and speak up to stop unfair treatment.
The level of oppression is how much you allow yourself to be stepped on. And you have to stand up. I don't know another way around it.